Naturally, when NIO asked me if I wanted to drive their latest flagship, tech-laden, bestest car ever, I said, how uncouth. Absolutely not. See, this is the ET9, and the correct way to drive this car isn't to drive it at all, but rather to be driven. I'm Will, and this is China Driven. Tally ho, and don't spare the horses, is what I would say if we had the budget. Or do I? Before we get started, this is a long video, but for good reason. There is really so much stuff to talk about the new NIO ET9. And if you've seen the videos from NIO, there are also some claims made by the OEM that need to be tested professionally. So exactly how much is this top of the line NIO going to set you back? Well, there's two prices. 788,000 RMB, which is about $107,000, or 808,000 RMB for the signature edition, which is going to set you back $110,000. Now that is a big chunk of change, I'll give you that. But if you imagine that in China, an entry-level Maybach S-Class starts at $200,000. In comparison, this might just be a bargain. The absolute lowest you can get into an ET9 is about $90,000 if you opt for BAAS, where you rent the battery for $155 a month, dropping that initial purchase price by over $16,000. Honestly, the ET9 is a bit of an oddity in terms of body shape. It doesn't really follow any conventional style. In fact, it makes me realize just how before its time the Honda Cross Tour was, because this has got a similar shape. This kind of jacked up coupe-ish sedan, but this is more substantial, more premium. 5.2 meters long, over 2 meters wide, with a wheelbase of 3.25 meters. Sure, the Maybach S-Class's wheelbase is 14 centimeters longer, but it's also 14 centimeters longer overall and lacking in features compared to this. Unlike the Maybach, this is a few features on the exterior. Having the key in your pocket and walking up will allow you to have the door automatically open for you. Being a NIO, this has NIO's AI voice assistant, Nomi, but you can control from the outside, so you do things like this. Hi, Nomi. 关车门. Pretty cool. But you can also do things like, Hi, Nomi. 全部车门打开. Pretty damn cool, is it not? But there's even more. Hey, Nomi. 后备箱打开. Hey, Nomi. 全备箱打开. That's right, this has not only electronically voice-controlled opening trunk, but also a voice-controlled opening frunk. Hey, Nomi. 做一个三明治. Well, she can't do everything. Now, you don't have to use a voice assistant to open and close it. You could also just use the button. There's also a touch button on the outside handle. Looking at that frunk though, NIO say that this is 105 litres up here, which is a decent size for a company whose vehicles up until now haven't had frunks, at least not for the NIO brand. The Onvo L60 does have a frunk because, like the ET9, it's on the NT3 platform, the newer platform, and the motors are smaller and the battery is slimmer, and that gives them more space in order to put a frunk in. So 105 litres, a decent kind of regular shape here. There's also a light so you can see things at night, and you don't have to use the voice assistant in order to close this. There is a button on the inside as well. I'm trying to remember, I don't think I've seen a voice controlled frunk before, or an automatically opening and closing, like fully. Not just like using an app to unlatch it, but to fully open and close. Hey Nomi, tremble Chuman Guam. So we can have a look at what this has in terms of trunk space back here. And it's a decent size. NIO's claim this has 544 liters, which is a little bit bigger than an S-Class or a BMW 7 Series, and a little bit less than an Audi A8L, the long wheelbase. But 544 liters, decent amount of room to carry stuff. Back here as well, you get a 12-volt socket, some tie-down hooks, and also a hook to hang things on. Now, it's 544 liters only because you're not able to put down the rear seats for obvious reasons that we'll get into when we get to the inside. You can also drop the air suspension back here so you can lower the whole rear of the car to aid getting things into the trunk.
The NIO ET9 rides on NIO's latest architecture, NT3, a 900-volt system including 900-volt motors that are smaller and more efficient, as well as a slimmer battery helping to increase interior room. That battery is a 100 kWh CATL NCM pack with a claimed 650 kilometers of range and a peak charging rate of 4C, meaning it can charge from 10 to 80% in 20 minutes, or you can swap it at a NIO Gen 4 battery swap station in under 3. The choice is yours.
In terms of ADAS hardware, the NIO ET9, being on the NT3 platform, has got some upgrades. It still has the watchtower from the NT2, so that's 2 cameras up top and a LiDAR in the center. But this now has an additional 2 LiDARs, one on each front fender. But most importantly about the ET9 is this is the first implementation of NIO's self-developed ADAS chips. To put that into comparison, my NT2 NIO ET7 has 4 NVIDIA Orin X chips with 1016 TOPS. NIO say that their self-developed Shenji NX9031 exceeds that, and this car has got 2 of them. However, unfortunately, NIO haven't actually pushed their self-driving functionalities to the ET9 yet. They expect to in the upcoming month or 2. So right now, I can't experience the NOP in the ET9. Now, I've moaned about automatic doors quite a lot in the past, but these ones are quite good. They're quite fast, and unlike other doors, they're really actually quite light to move. Also, when you jump in, you can just press the brake pedal and the door will automatically close. You can also close it with a button on the door to open and close. There's also one up here for when the door's open, and it's a little bit far to reach. Now, the interior of the ET9 truly upsets me to my core, makes me cry. For those of you who don't know, well, I own a NIO ET7, NIO's previous flagship sedan, and well, this smashes it out of the park. And I know that this is like double the price of my humble ET7, but, and I may be biased here, the ET7 is a comfortable premium sedan, but this is next level. This is insanely, I just can't explain how big of an upgrade this is from the interior of the ET7. Now, the materials, the level of just everything in here is just, it's nappa leather everywhere, and it is got such a premium, a luxurious feeling. It just feels and looks expensive in here. No matter where you touch, it's just soft leather. You know, you got this kind of quilted stitching, which is on the door card, but wraps all the way around the front dash as well. Quilted leather seats. And I know what you think, look at quilted leather, we've seen it before, right? It's not that much, but this is not, this is, when you push it, it's squidgy, it's plush. You know, this is not just some thin material with a bit of stitching in it. This really feels really high end. And also just the way it looks in here, it's just so much more than what the rest of the
NT2, the NIO ET7s, NIO ES8s, all lovely premium interiors, really good looking interiors. But this is just something else. Okay, let's talk about the kind of screens up here and get all that kind of stuff out of the way so we can move to where the party really is. Now, behind this roundish rectangle, you get the slither, this thin instrument panel that actually goes the whole length of the dash, and that is fully customizable. You can put something in the middle that you want to look at. Like at the moment, I've got energy consumption, and then on the side, I've got all my normal stuff. Speed is over here, for example, and battery and all of that stuff. And on the right, you can put other widgets in that you want to as well. And the same for the passenger, they can also customize their side of that screen as well. And even though the central screen is in the middle, the screen actually legitimately goes behind this screen continuously. I mean, they could have, you know, ended the screen and done 2 panels, but they went full out on this. I'll give you an example of just how above and beyond this car truly is. It's got a heads-up display, nothing new. Now, this one is equivalent to 120 inches, so it's a big boy. And you can see your ADAS visualization, your maps, your speeds, and all that kind of info like you normally can. But this is where it gets kind of crazy. Instead of using plastic or glass up here in order to reflect the HUD onto the windscreen, they're using lab-grown sapphire instead, because they say it gives a more crystal clear image. I mean, it's clear. Would I have moaned if it was using just normal glass like my ET7? Probably not. Will anybody really notice that without being told it? Probably not, but this is opulence, and that's why it's there. For the center screen, this is the first time we've got a horizontal screen in a NIO branded car. Now, it's 15.6 inches. It's a 3K AMOLED screen. It looks really clear, it's crisp, it's responsive, it's running NIO's self-developed Sky OS. Super fast. I really like the layout. I find it really intuitive, but that's also because it's very similar to the one in my car, so I think that's a little bit of a bias there. All the screens in here being run by a Snapdragon 8295P SoC. Snappy and responsive in here. The other big thing is that Nomi has been upgraded now. Right now, she's not really doing anything new and special, but her screen now is colored, and as well as just being able to move her head sideways like she can do on NT2 cars, she can now actually do this and bop along with the music, which is, I guess, even more fun than before. Now, I know the back's the real place to be, but we have to talk about these front seats. They are absolutely sumptuous. You sit down in them and you just sink into them. They're super comfortable. I'm being absolutely hugged like my mother would do by these side bolsters. And you know what? This has heat, ventilation, and spa massage, including a butt massage function. Great. But something that this has that I haven't seen before is you can choose Thai style massage, and then you can choose an extra option called hot stones. And then the little nubdules that start kind of massaging you, they heat up. And let me tell you this, it feels good.
It's good. It's good. It's good.
You got a lot of the kind of normal stuff up here that you would expect as well. You've got dual wireless chargers, they're called, 2 cup holders. You've got central storage, obviously there's a couple of USB-Cs in there. And then you've also got this panel here, which is like a capacitive touch panel. And you can do different things. If you kind of just swipe it, it changes track. But if you kind of hold it down and then go up and down, you can do the volume in the car like that. And I think that's kind of cool. So this allows you to kind of be able to change the volume without having to use a screen while you're driving just by feel. It also has 2 quick buttons on the side, one for the passenger, one for the driver. The passengers is set up to change their screen, but you can set them to all different kinds of things that you need. There is also a sunglasses holder in here, but it's not up here. Because NIOs normally have a vertical screen here, but now they've gone horizontal, well, I mean,
The options are endless with all this space down here. And what they've decided to do is put a sunglasses holder. Now it's a magnetic opening thing. Feels really premium, and I'm sure that's meant to happen. Hold on. Yeah, no worries. It's completely magnetic. That's a good thing. But it is nice and is kind of tucked out of the way. And if you caught NIO Day at the end of last year when they unveiled the ET9 and it kind of was launched, you would know they spent a lot of time talking about the audio system in here. Now it's got 8.2.4.8 Dolby Atmos spatial audio with 35 speakers. And it honestly is like a symphony in here. They put a lot of effort into the sound system and it really does sound good. So you also get a digital rear view mirror. Nothing new, we've seen it before, but this is something I haven't seen. You can actually tilt it up and down. Not only that, you can zoom in and out as well. That's something I haven't seen before. But let's forget this front. Let's forget it. No matter how absolutely lovely and gorgeous this is, to put it politely, if you are a Dalauban, a big boss, you're not in this seat. You're not even in that seat. That's old school big boss. You're in the back. So let's go have a look at that. Often the term first class seating or private jet seating is thrown around when talking about the rear of big, comfy sedans, but most of them don't have somebody on board like Chris Tomlinson, who helped design the interior of the G650. Now, I'm not important enough or rich enough to tell you how close this rear gets to a $78 million private jet, but I have to say this surpasses any car that I've been in. So back here, yes, there's a lot and we'll get into it, but we'll just go over some of the smaller things before we jump into all of the amazing things back here. First of all, you do have a 14.5 inch 3K OLED screen. That is, however, one of the very few options on the ET9. You also have, a little push out hook. You've got, for extra privacy, a rear sunshade, and also you've got a reading light, but it's positioned here over my shoulder. You might not even be able to see it, and it will shine the light onto what you're working on without kind of being in the way or shining into your face. The little ideas that really bring it from just a normal nice rear to something exceptional. And the materials back here, you've got the same thick plush quilted leather, the seats that you sink into, and you've got things like the real wood, which I believe is cedar wood in this particular color. You've got, I haven't seen this really, instead of one large panoramic roof, it's kind of divided down the middle, and inside that division is some ambient lighting and the controls to control either side of this panoramic roof. So if you don't want the sun, you don't have to have the sun. The other person can have the sun if they wish. Again, it's just those little things. You've got a little air outlet also in the B pillar, which is always nice. So this is Dalauban big boss car, and because of that, you might need to do some big boss work. You've got a little table here which feels every inch premium. It is heavy and sturdy, but if you're riding with your big boss friend, well, somebody's going to have to do their work on their lap because there's only one table to share. Subtle way to assert dominance in a relationship. But if you're riding with the wife back here, well, she'll probably commandeer it to use the fold out makeup mirror. But who are we kidding? Wife is always big boss. But the question is, who gets the only wireless charging pad back here, and who has to use a charging cable? Now, it depends upon your marital status, but for me personally, well, I'll ask the wife and then I'll tell you the answer. So let's talk about this central divide, which divides these absolutely gorgeous rear seats. Well, behind the air outlet, you get two cup holders, and in front of that, you have a little 8-inch screen, and that's basically your control panel. From here, you can control you know, the seats, the rear ones and the front ones, massage, ventilation, heat, the AC, the navigation, pretty much any function in the car can be controlled by this rear screen. And just listen to how silent it is as it moves. Because any motor whine would just be crude. Sometimes, rarely, infrequently, I am wrong. I wish that was true. My wife says I'm not even wrong the right way. But when I saw the setup for the safe and fridge in the ET9, with the safe being up here and the fridge being down behind here, I immediately said, that's the wrong way. I want my safe tucked out of sight and I want my drinks easily accessible, because no man shall hinder my drinking. But there is a method to this madness. You see, having the fridge down below means I can actually store more alcohol without eating into rear trunk space. In fact, down here, I can store 2 bottles of Maotai, and well, with 2 people in the back, that would be an outrageous party. The safe is fingerprint protected, and it even has a kind of false bottom for you to keep your super secrets secret. There is one issue I have found in the back of the ET9, and that is, well, there's nowhere to place my little Joel Bay, but with how stable this car is whilst driving, shouldn't be a problem. I should address where I so crudely called it a fridge, because that's not really technically true, because you can actually keep things cool down to -2 and all the way up to 50 degrees. And actually, this has another little secret. This can actually have a humidor mode, so you can keep the humidity stable, which means you can store other things in there other than just alcohol. One slight problem is, you're telling me that I can't drink cold champagne and smoke my cigars at the same time? But at least you're not American. Otherwise, well, you wouldn't have access to the world's best cigars, nor access to the world's best EVs. Having said all of that, I still haven't mentioned about these seats and what they can do. Obviously, being a big rear cabin like this of opulence and luxury, you can get in some proper comfortable situations, and with just a press of a button, things can move out of the way and your seat can both give you a thigh support, as it's given me now, the front seat's moving out of the way, and then it can just recline you nicely back. I mean, look at that. I mean, that's not even everything you can do. You can move that front seat even further out of the way if you wanted to, and now my feet are actually suspended and I could properly go to sleep back here if I wanted to. Hey Naomi,
我来啦。
我要踏雪按摩。
好的，帮你把座椅按摩上来了。
Hey Naomi,
我在，
开热水。
调好啦。
Oh, hot stone Thai massage. This is the life, isn't it? I mean, Firefly was a really fun little car, but this is hard to beat. Now I should probably continue on. And you may have seen that when NIO launched the ET9, there was a few different videos that came out, and one of them was the champagne tower. If you didn't see it, what they basically did is they balanced 4 and then 5 tiers of champagne glasses and drove the car without them dropping or spilling. And well, I don't have any champagne glasses, nor do I have any champagne, but I think we could try something. So, as I said, you might have seen NIO Champagne Tower Test. They had 4 levels of champagne glasses stacked on the bonnet and they drove it down a bumpy road. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but not champagne, because that's just not luxurious in China. If you're talking about luxury alcohol, then you're talking about Maotai. This is a champagne test with Chinese characteristics. Can the ET9 on this dirt road pass my Maotai tower test? with 2 layers because I don't have a big enough board to fit more on. Now, I got to jump into the right mode, so let me just find it here. Slight problem, there's no multi mode. But looking at the mode selection, I'm guessing that champagne mode is probably closer to multi than sand. So we'll go with that. This could go horribly wrong. I'm gonna put my seatbelt on for safety reasons. I'm putting it into drive mode. This is so dumb. And I'm gonna go very slowly. Okay, we'll do it 3 kilometers an hour. Let's go a little bit. I mean, it's kind of working, 6. It does get bumpy. Okay, it's getting bumpier. Okay, we're up to 8. I mean, this is muddy and bumpy. Oh my God, it's doing it. I thought it would instantly fail. Working. That's ridiculous. I mean, okay, I'm only doing 10, but still. Oh my God. Like when I saw it originally from NIO, I was like, yeah, I'm sort of pre-planned and pre-set. I was on that road somewhere. It's been raining, the car's kind of sliding up. I thought it would instantly fail. So I can't believe that that actually did it. It's super windy out here. And they all actually stayed on until I hit the brakes and then they all came tumbling down. However, one did survive, so cheers. Of course, that's the old Chinese wedding trick. It's not even open. It's just water. Never drink and drive. It was only a little bit of a joke. Please drive safely. But I am so surprised that that actually worked. This is just a dirt road, somewhere random that we just picked. And I honestly thought when I first saw the champagne test, like many people did, well, the OEM have set that up themselves, so obviously they've worked out how to achieve that. But no, it can really do it. Okay, you can't drive like 40 miles an hour, 60 kilometers an hour and do it, but on just some road that this car's probably never ever been down, it worked. I screwed it up by braking hard.
I'll admit that the NIO ET9 presented me with a personal first. The first time ever that I wasn't overly interested in driving a brand new car. And while I still maintain that the correct place in the ET9 is in the rear, driving it isn't half bad either. We actually picked this up in Hongqiao Airport and we drove it to where we've been filming today, which is in Chongming Island. And that was like an hour and a half through Shanghai traffic. And that was really actually quite pleasant. It's comfortable, it's powerful, it's easy to drive, and you can drive it in a very smooth manner. Now, yes, obviously being an EV means you have instantaneous torque, that helps, there's no gear changes, and obviously the suspension, which I'm about to talk about, plays a big part in that. But combined with the kind of comfy seats and the tiny little movements that you have to do, it's really not tiring to drive this thing. It's really, really quite pleasant, as it should be for the price that they're asking for this. Okay, let's address this squircle first. How does it translate in the real world? Well, you never need to do hand over hand when you are turning. A normal car with a quickish rack is lock to lock 1.5. This is nearly half of that, 0.66 turns. And for perspective, the Cybertruck is nearly a third more at 0.94 turns lock to lock. Obviously it achieves that super quick rack because this, like the Cybertruck, uses steer-by-wire. This is the second car in the world to do so. And because there's no physical connection between the wheel and the wheels, any feedback you do get in the steering wheel is kind of being done by motors. You could turn it off, but then it would feel like you were playing Gran Turismo on a PlayStation before vibration controllers were released. And I can hear some of you in the back muttering, "No, I wouldn't trust something, no physical connection." And well, while we pass over the fact that nearly all cars since the kind of early 2000s have throttle-by-wire, there are plenty of redundancies in this steer-by-wire system. Dual wires, dual sensors, dual power supplies, dual software. In fact, the software was developed by two different teams, kind of side by side. So the chances that the same kind of bug or issue comes up is highly unlikely. But if you feel that's not enough, feel free to carry an anchor with you. And yes, jumping into this, it does kind of do something to your brain, this super quick steering rack and also the rear wheel steer. The car being able to do things your brain can't quite comprehend for a vehicle of this size. However, you do adjust fairly quickly to it and it becomes very easy to drive, even with whatever you call this thing. And I've moaned multiple times about yokes, because when you steer, you're trying to grab the top, but because you never have to actually take your hand off to turn, well, you're never reaching for the top. I mean, you can steer it, I guess, like this if you wanted to. You look a bit weird though. Here we go. Way! Feels like I'm almost like I'm riding a bike. Power? Yes, it has some. Though realistically, in a car like this, it's merely a tool for your chauffeur to take you from point A to B. And they'll have 540 kilowatts of power and 700 Newton meters of torque. 0 to 100 in 4.3 seconds. Now, my ET7 actually has more torque than this and a faster acceleration than this. But that speaks to what this car is. Think of it like a Bentley with its iconic 6 3/4 V8. While immensely powerful, it's not trying to keep up with the likes of a Ferrari. Don't get me wrong, this car can hustle and it can make your head feel like it's being squeezed while you're riding that torque wave. But drive it normally, and it's smooth and powerful in a stately manner. In fact, it's pure royalty, as mashing the accelerator results in zero lift of the front end, and smashing the brakes will bring you from 100 to a full stop in 35.2 meters while keeping the car completely flat and level. In addition, NIO claim that they've eliminated 60% of body roll while cornering, and that is all thanks to this absolute trick suspension. NIO actually say with that trick suspension, they can eliminate nearly all of the body roll while cornering and all of the pitch and diving whilst accelerating and braking. But they say that would create such a disconnect between what the car was doing and what your brain was thinking that it would actually make it kind of less comfortable, as your brain would be absolutely liquefied trying to understand what was going on. Let's talk suspension. Now, it's got everything that you could throw at it, and if NIO thought that throwing the kitchen sink in would help as well, they probably would have done it. It's a 5-link multi-link in the rear, but it's a rear H-arm, and it's got a multi-link in the front. It's really just the tip of the iceberg in terms of its suspension. I think back there is the best place to talk about it. Sorry, I'm just getting myself comfortable. I've got a massage on and I am nice and relaxed. Now, that trick suspension, NIO call it Skyride, but it's an electro-hydraulic suspension supplied by a company called Clear Motion. Long story short, yes, it's that Bose suspension system on that old Lexus that you saw years and years ago finally is coming to production. Well, it's already in production. The NIO ET9 is the first in the world to use it. And obviously it's been improved since you saw it on a video that looked like it was filmed by a potato. Now, NIO also claim that they have mapped every single pothole in China, and I'm gonna call bullshit on that. However, in kind of cities and densely populated areas and, you know, roads that are used quite regularly, I would say, yeah, they have. Probably, you know, in
nearly all Sears in China, 99+%, they have matte. And how they've done that, I know how they've done that. They've done that by using NT2 cars who basically use their LiDAR and the sensors in their suspension to map out road conditions. So, for example, my car recently, my ET7 got updated with 4D, what NIO call 4D suspension. And that's where, because once several NIO cars, or even you as a user, go over a certain road enough times, there's enough data uploaded to a cloud map, so the car knows that in 100 meters, there's a big dip or there's a pothole or something, and it can kind of get the suspension ready to deal with that. So now, us NT2 users have done all that legwork. The ET9 can now access all of that cloud map data, and then combined with its suspension sorcery, it's able to deliver an even better ride than those NT2 cars. So in each corner there's an accelerometer, and it's basically measuring what's going on at each wheel of the car, and it basically tries to use kind of like an opposite force to what's happening to try to level out the body, and it kind of knows what's upcoming because of that cloud data map, so it's kind of ready, and that's going to really help it to try to keep the body level. Now that doesn't mean you don't feel any bumps or any undulations in the car. You do, but what would have been a big bump is just reduced to minor imperfections in the road, basically becoming minor blips on your comfy cruise. Picture the sea. You're a kid in the back, dad is hustling along in the car, and then all of a sudden a dip in the road and your belly feels like it's falling out. Well, if your dad owns a NIO ET9, you may never experience that sensation, because the ET9 does everything in its crazy superpowers to basically level the car after a dip. I mean, it's kind of crazy. It feels kind of, at first it feels eerie, and then afterwards, I don't know. It's really hard to explain because no other car I've ever ridden in behaves in that manner. Honestly, it seems so unrealistic. So many OEMs call their comfy suspension rider magic carpet, but even Aladdin would feel shortchanged by the genie if he took a ride in this ET9.
Actually, talking about carpets, the NIO ET9 has a few carpets to talk about, and I'm not talking about the ridiculously plush, luxurious thick car mats either, but rather light carpets. Firstly, the ET9's matrix headlights have a neat trick called a light carpet. It illuminates a brighter light on the road, showing your direction of travel, turning with the steering wheel inputs, bending the carpet. It will also illuminate potential hazards like pedestrians on the side of the road. The second is the welcome light carpet, part of the ET9's ambient lighting. As you approach the car at night, a light carpet illuminates to guide you past any trip hazards or puddles. And unscathed, you jump into the sophisticated ambient lighting of the interior.
And one last thing that I haven't seen mentioned that much about the ET9's new suspension is, well, do you know regenerative braking? Everybody knows that. All EVs have that, where basically you let off the accelerator pedal and it's able to recapture energy. We'll just keep it as simple as that. Well, we'll keep it equally simple for the NIO suspension. It's also regenerative, meaning when those springs are kind of compressing and decompressing, it's capturing energy and putting it back into the battery. Now that is pretty smart.
Safety also played a big part in the ET9's development. Standout features are the ability to retain vehicle control even with 2 tire blowouts at over 150 kilometers an hour. And the suspension is able to react in just 0.7 seconds when it senses something's going to hit you, and raises suspension to the highest setting, allowing the strongest part of the car to take the impact.
I know it all sounds fantastical, beyond belief. And you're thinking, if a Chinese OEM can have this groundbreaking suspension that redefines what a luxury premium, no, more than premium, luxury ride is, then how comes no Western OEM or car maker that I've heard of uses it? Well, maybe you do know this little German OEM called Porsche. Now, you know, they are quite a specialist OEM, but they've signed an agreement to use clear motion suspension technology in their upcoming cars. Quite a big boon for NIO, because as well as helping development of this suspension system, they also own a fair chunk of clear motion. So you have to kind of recognize that China is leading the way in implementing these new technologies. Some that they're self-developed, some that are co-developed. Either way, they're often the first to kind of venture into the unknown, and then everybody else follows. Undoubtedly in this EV space, that's just fact. Long story short, this is the best ride of any EV, no, any car I've been in. Nothing comes close to it. The things that this can do reshape your thinking. They redefine what you think is possible in a car. This is the part of the review when normally I have a witty or tongue-in-cheek moment where I compare myself to the car, but I'm exhausted and I'm sure that I haven't done this car justice. I'm almost certain that there are many, many things that I have forgotten. But when you've got a car this groundbreaking in a world that can only focus on 30-second TikToks, only the strongest will have survived to this point. So if you did like, subscribe, and comment, I made it to the end, because I am totally spent. But this is something else.